A poor girl walks into a widower's house for shelter and discovers a terrible secret. Emily Johnson felt tears mixing with the rain soaking her face as she ran through the deserted streets of Pittsburgh. Her worn-out sneakers could no longer protect her feet from the cold rising from the wet asphalt, and the canvas bag she carried was too heavy for her thin arms. It was when she saw a faint light flickering through the window of a simple house at the end of the street that she decided to knock on the door. She had nowhere else to go, and the storm punishing the city on that June night showed no signs of stopping any time soon. "Please, just until the rain passes," she murmured to herself, rehearsing the words she would say. Her trembling fingers knocked 3 times on the peeling wooden door. On the other side, she heard slow footsteps approaching, followed by a dry cough. "Who is it at this hour?" asked a man's hoarse voice. "My name is Emily. I need help. It's raining hard and I have nowhere to stay." The door opened just a crack, revealing the wrinkled face of an elderly man with graying hair and tired eyes. Robert Wilson was 68 years old and had lived alone in that house for 3 years, ever since his wife Margaret had passed away. "Young lady, what are you doing out on the street at this hour?" he asked, noticing she couldn't be more than 22 years old. "I know it's late, Mr. Wilson, but I swear I just need a little corner until morning. I promise I won't be a bother." Robert hesitated. He wasn't used to having visitors, especially strangers, but there was something in the desperate look of that young woman that moved him. Perhaps it was the memory of his own daughter, whom he had lost contact with so many years ago. "Come in, but wipe your feet," he said, opening the door completely. Emily entered, thanking him several times, taking off her soaked sneakers and leaving them at the entrance. The house was small but clean, with old furniture and a smell of mothballs that betrayed how long it had been since anyone had visited. "You can sit on the sofa over there. I'll get a towel for you to dry off," said Robert, pointing to the living room. It was when she settled in that she noticed something strange. All the photographs that should have been on the shelf were turned face down, as if someone didn't want to see the faces they held. Robert returned with an old but clean towel and a crocheted blanket. "Thank you, you're very kind," said Emily, drying her brown hair that stuck to her face. "Where are you from, young lady? What's this story about being out on the street at this hour?" Emily lowered her head. How could she explain that she had lost her job at the diner 2 weeks ago, that the money she had saved wasn't enough to pay for another month's rent for the little room she lived in, that she had been evicted that very morning and spent the whole day looking for somewhere to stay? "I had some problems, Mr. Wilson, but I don't want to bother you with my affairs." Robert watched her carefully. There was something familiar about that young woman's face, but he couldn't place what it was. He shook his head, pushing the thoughts away. "Are you hungry? I can heat up some soup." "You don't have to bother. It's no bother. I was going to have dinner anyway." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. While Robert went to the kitchen, Emily took the opportunity to observe the house more closely. It was evident that a woman had lived there. There were delicate curtains on the windows, small pots of dried plants on the table, and an atmosphere that tried to maintain coziness despite the neglect. On the wall she noticed several lighter marks, as if pictures had been recently removed. This piqued her curiosity, but she decided not to ask questions. Robert returned from the kitchen carrying 2 bowls of still steaming vegetable soup. "It's not much, but it'll warm you up," he said, sitting in the armchair across from the sofa. "You're very kind, Mr. Wilson. I promise I'll pay you back when I find a new job." "Don't worry about that now." They ate in silence for a few minutes. Emily was famished and the warm soup felt like a hug from the inside. Robert watched her eat with an expression that mixed melancholy and something she couldn't decipher. "Mr. Wilson, may I ask how long you've lived alone?" 3 years, he replied curtly. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be intrusive. My wife, she passed away 3 years ago. It's just been me ever since." Emily realized she'd touched on a painful subject and changed the conversation's focus. "The house is very cozy. It must have been a very happy home." Robert didn't answer immediately. His eyes fixed on one of the turned-over photographs on the shelf, and Emily noticed his hands trembled slightly. It was, yes. It was once very happy, he murmured. Silence fell between them again. Emily finished the soup and placed the bowl on the coffee table. Mr. Wilson, where can I sleep? Any little corner is fine with me. There's a pull-out couch right here in the living room. I'll fetch some sheets. While Robert went up the wooden stairs that creaked with every step, Emily stood up and walked to the shelf. Curiosity about the turned-over photographs was consuming her mind. She reached out toward one of the frames, but stopped when she heard Robert's footsteps coming back down. She quickly returned to the sofa. "Here are the sheets. They're clean. I washed them yesterday," said Robert, handing the set to her. "Thank you so much. You've been an angel in my life." Robert made a noise that could have been a bitter laugh or a sigh. "Angel. It's been a long time since anyone called me that." "Why do you say that?" "Never mind, child. You'd better rest. You can leave early tomorrow when the rain stops." "Of course, I understand." Robert went upstairs, and Emily began to set up the pull-out couch. As she spread the sheets, she couldn't stop thinking about the turned-over photographs and the sadness she saw in that man's eyes. She lay down and pulled the blanket up to her chin, but sleep wouldn't come. The rain continued to beat heavily on the roof, creating a constant noise that echoed through the quiet house. It must have been nearly midnight when Emily heard noises coming from upstairs. They were slow footsteps, as if someone were pacing back and forth. Then she heard a door open and close. Curious and concerned, she decided to go up and check if everything was all right. The stairs creaked under her bare feet as she climbed slowly, trying not to make noise. Reaching the top of the stairs, she saw a faint light coming from one of the rooms. The door was slightly ajar, and she managed to peek through the crack. What she saw left her frozen. Robert was kneeling on the floor, holding an old shoebox. Scattered around him on the floor were dozens of photographs. He picked them up one by one, looked at them carefully, and then placed them inside a trash bag. Forgive me," he whispered softly, tears streaming down his wrinkled face. Emily moved a little closer and managed to get a better look at one of the photos before he threw it away. Her heart almost stopped. In the photograph there was a young woman who looked just like her, same brown hair, same eyes, same face shape. It was impossible, but the resemblance was uncanny. Robert picked up another photo and, upon looking at it, began to cry more intensely. "I can't look at you anymore, my daughter. Forgive me for everything I did." Emily quickly backed away from the door, her heart racing. Daughter? What did he mean, daughter? That young woman in the photos couldn't be her. It made no sense. She ran down the stairs, not caring about the noise she made. Her mind was in a whirl, trying to process what she had just seen and heard. She sat on the sofa bed, trembling. It wasn't just from the cold. It was from fear and confusion. Who was that young woman in the photographs? Why did she look so much like her? And why had Robert called the person in the photo his daughter? Upstairs, the noises continued for a while longer, until finally the house fell silent. Emily spent the rest of the night wide awake, staring at the ceiling and trying to understand what she had witnessed. When the first rays of sunlight began to stream through the window, she heard Robert coming down the stairs. "Good morning, young lady." "Did you sleep well?" he asked, but his voice was hoarser than the night before, as if he had been crying a lot. "I did, thank you," she lied. Robert avoided looking directly at her as he headed to the kitchen. "I'm going to make some coffee. The rain has stopped. You can leave after breakfast." "Mr. Wilson, may I ask you a question?" "Go ahead." "Do you have any children?" Robert stopped in his tracks, as if he had been punched in the stomach. His hands braced against the wall. "Why do you want to know that?" "Just curious. The house feels like a family home." "I had a daughter once," he said softly, "but that was a long time ago." "What happened to her?" Robert turned to face her for the first time since he had come downstairs. His eyes were red and swollen. "She left and she never came back." "Do you miss her?" "Every single day of my life." Emily felt there was something much bigger behind that conversation, but she didn't know how to approach the subject. She decided to be more direct. "Mr. Wilson, were you throwing away photographs last night?" Robert's face turned pale. You saw me? I heard noise and went up to see if everything was all right. You weren't supposed to see that. Who was the young woman in the photos? She looked a lot like me. Robert approached slowly, as if he were seeing a ghost. You, he began, but his voice failed him. Me what? What is your full name? Emily Johnson. And your parents? Who are your parents? I never knew my parents. I was raised in a shelter since I was a baby. Robert leaned against the wall again, this time looking as if he might faint. Johnson? My God, Johnson. Do you know someone with that last name? I did. Margaret Johnson. That was my wife's maiden name. Now it was Emily's turn to feel the world spinning around her. Margaret Johnson? That was my mother's name on the shelter documents. The two stared at each other in silence for long seconds, as if trying to process an impossible piece of information. How old are you? Robert asked, his voice trembling. 22. When were you born? In December 2002. Robert sank heavily into a kitchen chair, burying his face in his hands. My God, it's you. It's really you. What are you talking about? Emily, you are my granddaughter. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. The silence that followed was deafening. Emily felt as if the ground had opened beneath her feet. Granddaughter? What did he mean, granddaughter? That's not possible, she whispered. Your mother was my daughter, Jennifer Wilson. She changed her last name to Johnson when she left home. No. This can't be happening. Robert stood up and walked to where she was, but kept his distance, as if afraid to scare her even more. Do you have a birthmark on your right shoulder? A small moon-shaped spot? Emily automatically brought her hand to her shoulder. How did he know that? How do you know? Because Jennifer had the same mark, and because I saw it when you were drying off last night. This doesn't make sense. If she was your daughter, why did she leave? Why did she abandon me at a shelter? Robert sat down again, this time looking as if he had aged 10 years in a few minutes. Because I kicked her out of the house. What? Jennifer got pregnant at 19. The baby's father abandoned her when he found out about the pregnancy. I was furious. I said terrible things to her. Told her she had dishonored our family, that she was a disgrace. Emily felt her world collapsing around her. And she left? That same day, she packed some clothes and left. Margaret begged me to go after her, but I was blinded by anger and pride. I thought she would come back and apologize. But she didn't come back. No. And when I finally swallowed my pride and went looking for her, she had disappeared. We searched all over town, asked everyone we knew. Nobody knew where she was. And then? Then it was too late. We found out she had given birth at a public hospital, but that she had passed away shortly after childbirth. The baby was taken to a shelter. Emily felt tears streaming down her face. That baby was me. It was you. We searched the shelters, but back then there was so much bureaucracy. They wouldn't give us any information. They said the baby had been registered only with the mother's name, Margaret Johnson. My mother used my grandmother's name. She used my Margaret's name. Perhaps a way to keep some connection to us, even after everything. Emily stood up abruptly, pacing back and forth in the room. I can't believe this. I spent my whole life wondering who my parents were, why they abandoned me. And now I find out my grandfather was just a few miles away this whole time. We never stopped looking. Margaret fell ill from so much grief. She said she had lost 2 daughters on the same day, Jennifer and you. And where is she now? Where is my grandmother? Robert closed his eyes, as if the question caused him physical pain. Margaret passed away 3 years ago. Her heart couldn't handle the sadness. She died. The doctor said it was a heart attack, but I know it was from a broken heart. She never forgave herself for not stopping me from kicking Jennifer out. Emily sat down again, feeling dizzy. So I really have lost my entire family. Not all of it. You have me now. You? You who kicked my mother out of the house? You who are responsible for me growing up without a family? Anger began to take over Emily. 22 years of abandonment, of feeling unloved, of wondering why she had been rejected. Emily, I know you have every right to hate me, but hate? You think it's just hate that I feel? She shouted, standing up again. Do you have any idea what it's like to grow up not knowing who you are? What it's like to feel completely alone in the world? I know I made a terrible mistake, but... Mistake. This was much more than a mistake. You destroyed our family out of pride. My mother died alone, I grew up without love, and my grandmother died of sadness. Robert was crying now, but Emily felt no pity for him. How many nights do you think I cried wondering if I wasn't good enough? If there was something wrong with me that made my parents abandon me? Emily, please, no, you have no right to ask anything of me. You threw away our family like it was trash. She ran to grab her things, putting her still damp sneakers on her feet. Where are you going, and away from here? Away from you. Please don't go, don't make the same mistake I made. Don't let pride destroy another chance. What chance? The chance to have a relationship with the person who caused all my suffering? The chance for us to be a family again. Emily stopped at the door, not turning to look at him. You destroyed our family 23 years ago. There's nothing left to rebuild. And she walked out, slamming the door behind her. Robert was left alone in the room, surrounded by silence and the weight of his decisions. Outside, Emily wandered aimlessly through the city streets, crying with anger and pain. But as she walked, some questions began to arise in her mind. If Robert had really looked for her, why had he never found her? If he regretted it so much, why was he throwing the photos away last night? There was something that didn't add up in that story, and she needed to find out what. After walking for hours, Emily decided to go back, not because she had forgiven Robert, but because she needed answers, answers that only he could give. When she got back to the house, she found the door open. Robert was in the backyard, digging a hole near a rose bush. "What are you doing?" Robert was startled to hear her. "Emily, you came back?" "I have questions that need to be answered." "I'm burying the photographs. I can't look at them anymore." "Why not? If you miss my mother so much, why destroy the only memories you have of her?" Robert stopped digging and leaned on the shovel. "Because they remind me of what I destroyed. Every time I look at her face, I see how much she hated me in the last moments we spent together." "Tell me exactly what happened on the day she left." Robert sighed deeply. "Jennifer came home crying. She said she was pregnant and that her boyfriend had broken up with her. I lost my temper. I yelled that she had dishonored our family, that she was irresponsible. And her, she begged me to understand, said she needed support. But I was blind with anger. I told her that if she wanted to live like an adult, she should leave the house and fend for herself." "And that's when she left?" "Not immediately. First, she went up to her room and stayed there for hours. I could hear her crying, but I was determined to stand my ground. I thought she would come down and apologize. But that's not what happened. No. She came down carrying a suitcase and said she was leaving. I thought it was drama, that she would come back in a few days when she got over her tantrum. You didn't try to stop her." Margaret tried. "She begged me to go after Jennifer, but I said I wouldn't humiliate myself for an ungrateful daughter." Emily felt the anger returning, but forced herself to stay calm to hear the whole story. "When did you realize you had made a mistake?" "The next day, when she didn't come back. And after a week, when we started calling everyone we knew and no one knew where she was. And you really looked? We looked for years. We even hired a private detective. But it was as if she had disappeared from the world." "And about me? When did you find out I had been born?" Robert stopped digging and looked directly at her. 6 months after she left. An acquaintance of ours who worked at the public maternity ward told us that Jennifer had given birth. But that... His voice faltered. "That what?" "That she had passed away shortly after giving birth. The nurses said she left only a note saying she wasn't able to take care of the child." "And you didn't come get me at the shelter?" "We tried. But back then there was a lot of bureaucracy. They said we needed the mother's authorization, and she had disappeared. The social workers thought we were just an old couple wanting to adopt a child and made everything difficult. And you gave up." "We never gave up," shouted Robert, the first time she saw him truly upset. "We fought for 3 years to get custody of you. When we finally got all the necessary documents, you had already been adopted." Emily felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. "Adopted? But I was never adopted. I stayed at the shelter until I was 18. What do you mean you were never adopted?" "I spent my entire childhood and adolescence at the shelter. I left when I came of age." Robert looked at her with a completely confused expression. "That's not possible. They told us you had been adopted by a family from another state." "Who said that?" "The social worker assigned to your case, Mrs. Victoria, a woman around 50 years old." "Mrs. Victoria? A thin woman with glasses, grey hair always tied in a bun?" "Yes, that's her." "Do you know her?" "She was the director of the shelter where I lived. She never told me you had tried to get me." They stared at each other in silence, processing that devastating information. "This means that," began Emily, "that someone lied, to us and to you." "But why? Why would she do that?" Robert dropped the shovel and walked to the porch, sitting on the steps. Emily followed him. "I have a theory, but you might not like it." "Tell me." "Back then, the shelter received government funding for each child they kept there. The more children, the more money." "Are you suggesting she kept us apart for money?" "I don't know. But she clearly lied to both sides." Emily felt a mix of anger and sadness. If that were true, it meant she could have grown up with her family, that she didn't need to have spent so many years feeling abandoned. "There's one more thing," said Robert hesitantly. "What?" "When Margaret found out you had been adopted, she got sick. Literally sick. She spent days in bed crying. That's when her heart problems started." "Did she really want me?" "She loved you even before meeting you. She said you were her only chance to have a little piece of Jennifer back." Emily started crying again, but this time it wasn't just from anger. It was from sadness for everything they had lost. "Mr. Wilson, what if we go to the shelter? What if we confront Mrs. Victoria? Do you think she'll admit what she did after so many years?" "Maybe not. But I need to look her in the eye and know the truth." Robert stood up, a new determination in his eyes. "Then let's go. Today." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. St. Mary's home was on the other side of town, in an old building surrounded by high walls. Emily felt her heart racing as they approached the place where she had spent 18 years of her life. "How long has it been since you've been here?" asked Robert as they walked toward the gate. 4 years since I left." "What was it like growing up here?" "Lonely. Even surrounded by other children, I always felt alone, unlike the others who had visitors or who were eventually adopted." They rang the bell and were greeted by a young woman Emily didn't recognize. "Good afternoon. We'd like to speak with Mrs. Victoria." "She's in a meeting. Do you have an appointment?" "No, but it's something urgent. Tell her Emily Johnson is here." The young woman hesitated, but went to deliver the message. She returned a few minutes later. "She'll see you in 5 minutes. You can wait in the visiting room." The room was exactly as Emily remembered. Uncomfortable chairs, peeling walls painted a faded green, and the same smell of disinfectant mixed with reheated food. "Is this where you had visits?" asked Robert, looking around. "I never had visits." "Never?" "Never. The other children sometimes had families interested in adoption or distant relatives. I was always left out." Robert felt the weight of guilt growing with each revelation. "Emily Johnson, what a surprise to see you here." They turned and saw Mrs. Victoria entering the room. She was a woman in her 60s, thin, with an expression that tried to seem warm but couldn't hide a certain discomfort. Mrs. Victoria. "And who is this gentleman with you?" "He is—" Emily hesitated, still processing the whole situation. "He is my grandfather." Mrs. Victoria's expression changed slightly, as if she had seen a ghost. "Your grandfather? But Emily, you always said you had no family." Because that's what you told me, that I'd been abandoned and that nobody had ever asked about me. Yes, of course that's what I said, because it was the truth. Robert stood up, staring directly at Mrs. Victoria. It wasn't the truth. I'm Robert Wilson, father of Jennifer Wilson. My wife and I looked for our granddaughter for years. Mrs. Victoria visibly paled. I don't remember any Robert Wilson. Of course you remember. You told us Emily had been adopted by a family from another state. There must have been some misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Emily stood up too. You lied to my grandparents and lied to me. They wanted me and you kept us from being a family. Emily, please lower your voice. There are children here. Answer me. Why did you do this? Mrs. Victoria looked toward the door, as if searching for an escape route. I need to check the files. There might have really been some misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding, said Robert firmly. You knew exactly what you were doing. I won't accept these accusations. You have no proof of anything. Then prove us wrong, challenged Emily. Show the files from my case. Show the contact attempts my grandparents made. Mrs. Victoria hesitated for a long moment. The files from that time were damaged in a flood a few years ago. How convenient, murmured Robert. It's the truth. We lost many important documents. Mrs. Victoria, said Emily, moving closer to her, I spent 18 years here. 18 years wondering why nobody wanted me. Do you have any idea what that did to me? Emily, you received all necessary care here. You had education, food, a roof. But I didn't have love. I didn't have family, and I could have had it if you hadn't lied. I did what I thought was best for you. Lies, you did what was best for you. The following silence was tense. Mrs. Victoria breathed heavily, clearly nervous. I think you'd better leave, she said finally. We will leave, said Robert, but this isn't over. What do you intend to do? We're going to find out the truth, with or without your help. They left St. Mary's home in silence. It was only when they were back in the car that Emily exploded. She lied. I saw it in her eyes. She was lying. I saw it too. She knew exactly who we were. How can we prove it? I don't know. But there must be some way. They sat in the car for a few minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. You know what makes me angriest? Said Emily finally. What? That even if we prove she lied, it won't bring my grandmother back. It won't give me back the years I spent alone. It won't indeed. But it might give us some kind of peace. Peace? What do you mean, peace? Knowing we fought for you, that we didn't abandon you by choice. Emily looked at Robert, seeing for the first time not just the man who had thrown her mother out of the house, but also a grandfather who had lost as much as she had. Mr. Wilson, I'm still very angry with you for what you did to my mother. I understand, and you have every right to be. But I'm also starting to understand that maybe we're both victims of circumstances. How so? Mrs. Victoria stole 22 years from us. She should pay for it, not us. Robert nodded slowly. What do you want to do now? I want to find out the truth, the whole truth. About my mother, about Mrs. Victoria, about everything. And then we'll see if we can build something together. It was a beginning. Small, hesitant, but it was a beginning. They returned to Robert's home and spent the rest of the afternoon talking. He told stories about Jennifer when she was a child, showed photo albums that Emily had never seen. She talked about her life at the home, about the difficulties she faced after she left. You know what I wanted most when I was a child, said Emily, flipping through an album with pictures of her mother. What? To know what my mother was like. If she liked the same things I did, if she looked like me. You are very much alike, not just physically. Jennifer was also stubborn, determined, and she had a huge heart. Why did she never come home, even after I was born? Robert sighed deeply. I believe she was also very proud, and probably very hurt. After the things I said, what things exactly? I said she had disappointed me, that she was no longer my daughter, that she was a disgrace to our family. Emily felt a pang in her chest, imagining her mother hearing those words. And she never tried to get in touch after that? If she tried, we never found out. But I doubt it. Knowing Jennifer, she must have decided she never wanted to see us again. And you? Why didn't you insist more on looking for me after you found out I was at the home? We insisted for 3 years, but Mrs. Victoria always said you were fine, that you were being taken care of, and that you didn't need anything else. She used to visit me sometimes. She always asked if I was okay, if I needed anything. Now I understand why. She was making sure you wouldn't suspect anything. Exactly. They kept talking until nightfall. When Emily realized it, it was already dark outside. I need to go, she said, getting up. Where to? I need to find a place to stay, maybe a hostel, or... Emily, you can stay here. I don't know if that's a good idea. Why? Because I'm still processing all of this. And because I still don't know if I've completely forgiven you. Robert nodded, understanding. I get it. But the offer stands. You can stay in your mother's old room. I kept everything just as she left it. You kept her room? I did. Margaret said that one day Jennifer would come home. Can I see it? Robert took her to the room upstairs. When he opened the door, Emily was speechless. The room was exactly as if her mother were coming back at any moment. The bed was made, the clothes were still in the wardrobe, there were even open books on the desk. My God! Margaret cleaned in here every week. She said that when Jennifer came back, everything had to be perfect. Emily walked around the room slowly, touching the objects her mother had touched. There were pictures of friends on the wall, a diary on the nightstand, even plants that someone had kept alive all these years. Who took care of the plants after she left? Margaret, and after she passed, I started taking care of them. Why? Because it was the only way I had to keep Jennifer alive in this house. Emily sat on the bed, feeling a connection with her mother that she had never experienced before. Can I stay here tonight? Of course, the room is rightfully yours. Thank you. Robert left the room and let her be alone. Emily spent the night exploring every corner, reading her mother's diary, looking at the photos, trying to get to know the woman who had carried her in her womb. It was in the diary that she found the first real clue about what had happened. Daddy said I am a disgrace, that I am no longer his daughter. I don't know what to do. I'm scared, but I'm also angry. How can he abandon me when I need him the most? I'm leaving tomorrow. I'll prove that I can make it on my own. And on the next page, I got a job at a diner. The pay is low, but it's enough for a small room. The baby is due in December. I don't know how I'll manage alone, but I'll try. I can't go home after everything Daddy said. Later. The baby was born today. She's a beautiful girl. She has dark eyes like mine and Daddy's small mouth. I wish so much that Mommy could meet her. But I can't take care of her right now. I can barely support myself. Maybe it's better to leave her at the home until I can get back on my feet. And in the last entry, I can't stop thinking about my daughter. It's been 2 months since I left her at the home. Every night I dream about her. But when I go to visit her, Mrs. Victoria says it's better if I don't show up too much, that it confuses the child. Maybe she's right. Maybe it's better if I disappear from her life forever. Emily closed the diary with tears in her eyes. Her mother hadn't abandoned her out of lack of love. She had sacrificed herself, thinking she was doing what was best for her daughter. The next morning, she went down to have breakfast with Robert. I read her diary, said Emily, and what did you find out? That she didn't abandon me. She thought she was doing what was best for me. Jennifer was always like that, always put others before herself. And I found out something else. Mrs. Victoria convinced my mother not to visit me anymore. What do you mean? She said the visits confused me, that it was better for her to disappear from my life. Robert clenched his fists. That woman manipulated our whole family. She separated all of us. You and my mother and me, you and me. We have to do something. I have an idea, but it's going to take courage. I'm listening. Let's go back to the home, but this time we'll look for other people who worked there at the time. Someone must remember your attempts to find me. Do you think anyone will talk? I think someone might have a guilty conscience for staying silent all these years. They went back to the home the following afternoon. This time, instead of looking for Mrs. Victoria directly, they stayed outside waiting for the employees to come out for lunch. "That lady over there," said Emily, pointing to a middle-aged woman leaving the building. "That's Mrs. Ruth. She worked in the kitchen when I lived here." They approached her. "Mrs. Ruth?" The woman turned and smiled upon recognizing Emily. "Emily, my dear, how you've grown, and so beautiful." "Thank you, Mrs. Ruth. Can I talk to you for a minute?" "Of course, dear." Emily introduced Robert and quickly explained the situation. Mrs. Ruth listened with an increasingly concerned expression. "My dear, I always thought it was strange you never had any visitors. Do you remember if anyone asked about me?" Mrs. Ruth hesitated. "Look, Emily, I only worked in the kitchen. It wasn't my area to know about those things. But you must have heard something, some comment. I don't know if I should say." "Mrs. Ruth, please. It's very important to me." The woman looked around as if afraid of being overheard. "I remember one time, you must have been about 5, an elderly couple came here asking for a girl named Emily." Robert stepped forward. "That was us, my wife and I. I remember because I thought it was strange. Mrs. Victoria told them there was no Emily at the home. But that's a lie. I was there. I know you were. That's why I thought it was strange. But it wasn't my place to question Mrs. Victoria." "Did you see this happen other times?" "Yes, I did. A few times. Always the same couple, and always Mrs. Victoria saying she didn't know anything." Emily and Robert looked at each other. Finally, they had a witness. "Mrs. Ruth, would you be willing to testify to this officially?" "Testify how?" "In a legal case against Mrs. Victoria." Mrs. Ruth paled. "Oh, Emily, I don't know. I still work here. If Mrs. Victoria finds out I talked, you can't keep protecting someone who harmed an innocent child." "But I need my job, dear. I have a family to provide for." "We understand," said Robert. "We won't force you to do anything." They said goodbye to Mrs. Ruth and headed home. "She's afraid," said Emily on the way. "I understand. It's hard to confront someone who has power over you. But at least we know we're not crazy. Mrs. Victoria really lied." "We know, but I'm not sure if we'll be able to prove it." That night, Emily was in her mother's room when Robert knocked on the door. "May I come in?" "Of course." "Emily, I was thinking, maybe it's not important to prove anything about Mrs. Victoria." "What do you mean?" "What matters is that we found each other, that now we can be a family. But she hurt so many people." "She did. But if we focus on the past, we'll lose the present." Emily reflected on those words. "You're right, but I still feel like I need justice." "What kind of justice?" "I don't know. Maybe making sure she doesn't do this to anyone else." "And how would we do that?" "By reporting it to the proper authorities. Even without concrete proof, an investigation might uncover other irregularities." "Do you want to do that?" "I do, but not alone." "You're not alone, Emily. You never will be again." They spent the following days preparing a formal complaint. They gathered everything they had, the dates of Robert and Margaret's visits, Mrs. Ruth's testimony, who finally agreed to speak officially, and even excerpts from Jennifer's diary. A week later, they filed the complaint with Child Protection Services. "Now what?" asked Emily as they left the building. "Now we wait, and in the meantime, we try to build our family. Do you think it will work? After so much time, so much hurt?" "I don't know, but it's worth trying." In the months that followed, Emily moved permanently into Robert's house. It wasn't easy. There were moments of tension, arguments about the past, tears on both sides. But there were also moments of affection, of mutual discoveries, of building new memories. Robert taught Emily how to cook Jennifer's favorite recipes. Emily helped Robert organize the family photographs, creating new albums that included her childhood pictures from St. Mary's home. "You know what I miss?" said Emily one afternoon as they sorted photos. "What?" "Not having known my grandmother. She seems like she was an amazing person." "She was. Margaret was pure kindness. She would have loved you so much." "I know. I feel like I owe her something." "What kind of debt?" "For not letting her know me, for growing up believing no one cared about me." "Emily, that wasn't your fault. You were a child." "I know, but it still hurts." Robert stopped organizing the photos and looked at her. "You know what Margaret wanted most?" "What?" "For our family to be together again. She said that one day somehow we would find each other." And she was right. She was. Maybe not in the way she imagined, but she was right. 3 months after filing the complaint, they received a call from Child Protection Services. The investigation had revealed several irregularities in Mrs. Victoria's administration, including misappropriation of funds meant for the children and falsification of documents. "Will she pay for what she did?" asked Emily. "She will face criminal and civil charges, and she's been removed from her position." "What about the other children who may have been harmed? They're investigating all cases from the last 20 years. At least some good came out of all this." "It did. And do you know what the best thing that came out was?" "What?" "That we found each other." Emily smiled. It was true. Despite all the pain, all the lost years, they had found each other, and they were building something new together. "Mr. Wilson, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you regret kicking my mother out?" "I regret it every day. It's the biggest mistake I ever made in my life." "And may I ask something else?" "You may." "If she showed up at your door today, what would you do?" Robert thought for a long moment. "I would ask for forgiveness, and I would beg her to give me a chance to be the father she deserved to have. And if she didn't forgive you, I would respect that, but I wouldn't give up trying to earn her forgiveness. You know something. I think she has already forgiven you." "Why?" "Because she brought me here. Somehow she made me find my way home." Robert felt his eyes filling with tears. "Do you really believe that?" "I do. What other explanation is there for me knocking on your door that stormy night? Coincidence? I don't believe in coincidences. I believe some things are meant to happen." "So you believe it was fate that we met?" "I do. And I believe my mother and my grandmother somehow helped make it happen." They spent the rest of the afternoon talking about Jennifer and Margaret, sharing memories and creating theories about how happy they must be to see them together. At the end of the day, as they prepared dinner together in the kitchen, Emily looked at Robert and noticed that for the first time since they had met, he seemed at peace. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "I'm thinking that I finally feel at home again." "Why?" "Because this house has come back to life. It has laughter again, conversations, someone to share meals with. And I'm thinking that I finally know what it's like to have a family. Even though it's just the two of us. It's not just the two of us. We have my mother and my grandmother here with us too. In a different way, but we do." Robert smiled. "You're right. They are here with us. And they always will be." That night, for the first time since Jennifer had left home 23 years earlier, the Wilson house became a real home again. A year later, Emily had gotten a job as an administrative assistant at a nearby school. Robert had retired for good and dedicated his time to taking care of the house and helping Emily whenever she needed. They established new traditions. Every Friday was pizza and movie night. Every Sunday was the day to visit Margaret's grave, bringing fresh flowers. And every December 15th, Emily's birthday, they made a cake and sang happy birthday to Jennifer too. "You know what I discovered?" said Emily one Friday as they chose which movie to watch. "What?" "That family love doesn't depend on time. It depends on willingness." "How so?" "We've known each other for just over a year, but I feel like you've been my grandfather my whole life." "I feel that too. It's like you've always been here." "Maybe we always were. We just didn't know where to look." "Maybe." They chose an old movie, one of those that Margaret used to like, and settled on the couch with the pizza still warm. "Emily?" "Yes?" "Thank you." "Why?" "For giving me a second chance, for allowing me to be your family." "Thank you too, for showing me that I always had a family even without knowing it. We're going to be all right, aren't we?" "We are. Because now we know that no matter what happens, we have each other." And it was true. After so many years of loneliness, pain, and regret, they had finally found their place in the world. It wasn't the family they had dreamed of having. It wasn't complete. It didn't erase the losses of the past. But it was real. It was strong. And it was built on a solid foundation of forgiveness, understanding, and true love. On the television screen, the movie began to play the closing credits. Emily was asleep on the couch, her head resting on Robert's shoulder. He covered her with a blanket and stayed there, looking at his granddaughter's serene face. For a moment he saw Jennifer in those features. For a moment he felt as if his daughter had come back home. For a moment he was certain that, despite all the mistakes, despite all the lost time, love had won in the end. And for the first time in 23 years, Robert Wilson slept in peace. End of story. Tell us what you thought of this story of reunion and forgiveness. Do you believe that family love can overcome any obstacle? Leave your opinion in the comments with sincere words. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories.